Susan Casey, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I am happy to have you. Listen, I always think a great place to start these discussions is to learn a little bit about you and what you're doing. So tell our audience a little bit about Pear Deck Learning. What is Pear Deck Learning and what do you do for them?
Well, Pear Deck Learning is part of a company actually over that oversees us too is GoGuardian.
Hmm.
And I am the account executive currently for the state of Texas. And that means I sell all of the GoGuardian and Pear Deck Learning's products to school districts throughout schools and school districts throughout the state of Texas.
I see. And so uh, GoGuardian acquired Pear Deck Learning at some point, didn't it?
Yes. So GoGuardian was established back in 2015, and it's a single platform that helps districts and schools create safe learning environments for students
Hmm.
with web content filtering, student safety, self-harm, and classroom management. And they acquired Pear Deck in 2020. And so Pear Deck has been a part of GoGuardian since that time. And Pear Deck now has expanded to what we call Pear Deck Learning, which is an all-in-one platform that gives teachers like time-saving support to create lessons. I think that's how you know it. Most people know us by Pear Deck's engaging lessons that students love, and helps differentiate classroom support. And then we also have pair practice as part of that now. So once you have engaged your students through lessons and instructed, you can give them more practice towards standards mastery on whatever it was that they missed. And then we also have pair assessment. They purchased pair. They purchased the company Edulastic in
Hmm.
2020 as well, and have renamed it to Pear Assessment. And that's an assessment platform that assesses progress kind of wherever it's needed in the class, either in the classroom with formative assessments or district-wide common assessments, quizzes, things like that.
That is super exciting. It sounds like Pear Deck has gone through quite an evolution since it's been acquired by GoGuardian. So you are in sales, and were you in sales for Pear Deck prior to the acquisition?
Yes, I joined Pear Deck in its very formative stages. I was employee number 24,
Oh wow.
and I was their first salesperson west of the Mississippi. So I took care of Pear Deck for everything, for all the states that were in the western half of the United States, and helped grow Pear Deck to the point of it being acquired.
Wow.
So yeah, it was fun. It was a fun time to be in a startup. I love that early stage startup of a company. It was just a lot of like just inter interaction between all the teams, and we were just a small but mighty little company that was trying to get student engagement into classrooms across the United States. So it
Yeah,
was
well, I
fun.
think it sounds like you guys did a great job because my son's 15 now, but I can remember, well prior to 2020, I recognized Pear Deck from the district that that my town supports. So obviously, you made a lot of headway, and now you are no longer a startup, part of a larger organization. What has that meant to you for your day to day? I would assume that now you're selling a broader portfolio of solutions than what was just in the original Pear Deck.
Absolutely. So initially, it did require us, having to learn all of those other products that we were going to sell. And then as we acquired also then Pair Assessment, which is Assessment Now, and we had a tutor. We were selling tutoring for 2 years as well. We no longer have that tutoring arm of the company.
Hmm.
Um, so I would say going from a very small startup to a larger company, it had its road bumps for all of us because GoGuardian had never acquired a company before either. So there was a lot of work trying to integrate the two cultures, and then and employees and jobs and things like that. At the time that was happening was kind of like at the end of the pandemic, right?
Hmm.
So most people were remote, even though GoGuardian had a headquarters. So yeah, it was quite a time to get us all together as a company, and I think it's been it's been quite successful, in the profitability of the company. But as I said, it does come with, bumps in the road, and colleagues that you love that leave, and
Mhm.
things like that. So it's required a lot of flexibility and adaptability. But
Yeah.
that's what teachers do every day. So.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I want to get to that part of your background for sure. So when you were employee number 24, Pear Deck was a much smaller organization. You were covering the whole left half of the country. Now you're selling more solutions in the portfolio just for the state of Texas. What describe to me how that is different for you, being able to focus on one solution to a larger territory, now multiple solutions to a much smaller territory, even though Texas is a really big state.
It is a big state. Well, and I'm new to Texas. This past year was my first year selling Texas. I had remained on the West for all these other years, and had a lot of and I still do have like so many wonderful relationships with people that I was selling to and working with in districts all over California and Nevada and Hawaii, like all over.
Mm,
So it was a big change for me to come to a state that was brand new to me, and now I'm having to start up with new relationships and partnerships. So that's been a new adventure, but it's been great. I needed a change for me personally to just kind of learn about a new area of the country, and kind of see where I could make my mark in Texas, because definitely made our mark. I made my mark in California,
mhm.
and I felt like I needed a new challenge. So it's been great. It's
That's
been it's
great.
been fun. Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
good.
I would imagine also the conversations that you're having with educators has broadened because now it's more than just, original Pear Deck solutions, which I recall as, hopped up PowerPoint, which is, I'm sure, an unfair characterization. But now you're getting into GoGuardian and student wellness and student safety and cybersecurity and all the rest of it. Are you talking to a broader audience of administrators now that the solution stack has gotten a lot broader?
Absolutely, 100%. And that has that how should I say it? It's like that for me. That's been great because I'm talking to a lot broader group of people in schools and districts.
Hmm.
Um, having had the background in a district, and in teaching, is really familiar with that. So approaching directors of technology for our safety security products, and then the curriculum instruction folks for our assessment and Pear Deck, all of Pear Deck Learning. Um, Also, I get to meet with student support services and mental health counselors for
Wow.
our Beacon product. Data warehousing is like the data analytical people. So it really is giving me a really wide perspective on how districts all work together, or don't, and how budgets all kind of try to align, but everybody has their own budget. So it's been really an interesting move, to be able to cover all of those products at one time.
Yeah.
But it's been great because, um, again, meeting so many different folks, but getting a much better idea of what a district's vision is and what their goals are, and having these meetings with them, having a wide range of products to be able to sell, is I can find something that's going to help them, something that's going to help make a difference in their district for their students or for their teachers or for their administrators. So I'm not just pigeonholed into like one product, and then I'd have to like walk out the door and say, oh, that's not something you need right now, or that's not
Yeah.
something that's going to fit here. So this way, we become more like experts with our partners, and being able to craft something, and or bundle things together that will make sense for them. Because truthfully, what GoGuardian has been trying to do with Pear Deck Learning, as well as the GoGuardian products, is just become that all-in-one platform, that kind of gives teachers the supports that they need, but also delivering differentiating instruction in the classroom, plus making sure that those students are safe on their devices, and that we're watching out for unfortunately, student self-harm and violence. So
Mm-hmm.
um, it's it's a long way from being a teacher with just 28 to 30 students a day in a
Yeah.
classroom.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that because I could already tell you've got intimate familiarity with a lot of the inside baseball. You talked about like, departments working together or not working together, budgets sometimes being in crisis, sometimes budgets are unorganized, that sort of thing. That's a world that you lived in for a long time. So tell us about your background as an educator. What did you do as an educator? And what were some of the things that informed your eventual transition from the classroom to corporate America?
Um, Great questions. Thank you. So I started out before I was a teacher, and before I came to get a credential. I came to get my credential late, but I was a stay-at-home mom that was raising four kids, and I was heavily involved in their school activities.
Mm-hmm.
And I was president of a parents club that our budget was in California, that's sadly what you need to be able to provide the things that are needed for students, because districts can't do it themselves. And that was back in 2004 and 5,
Mm-hmm.
for 2 years. And our budget then was like close to $500,000 of financial support to the schools. So I had, and then I was on site councils and on other councils in the school district. So I had a really good bird's eye view of how a district ran, but I was also volunteering like crazy in my kids' classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened with that is that um, a principal that I worked with so closely as the Parents Club president said, Susan, I think it's time for you to stop volunteering and get paid for all the work you do. And if you get your credential, I'll hire you. So that's what I did.
Wow.
I started first while I was getting my credential. I was substitute teaching, so I subbed. My first day of subbing was in wood shop, middle school wood shop. Go figure that. Like dangerous pieces of equipment and middle schoolers.
Yeah.
Um, so I subbed throughout the district and kind of settled on to library and K-8
Mm-hmm.
work. And I was a long-term sub in a library, and then I got hired to be a librarian at a different school. So I was a K-5 librarian, and I loved that job so much. It was so much fun. I did lesson plans with the kids, and I think I was also well loved. And then, budget times, they change all the time in our district. Pink slipped all the credentialed librarians. So unfortunately, I had to find a different role. And then I went to teach social studies, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade social studies. And I was
Mm-hmm.
a tech teacher for 2 years at a parochial school. And then I came back to my district when there was an opening for elementary, and I went back to the same school that I had been the librarian for, and I stayed there, and I taught fourth grade and I taught third grade. So that's kind of my teaching background. All along the way, though, when I reflect upon that, is I think all teachers are curious, right? And we're learners by nature. That's why we love teaching students.
Yeah.
So I continued like my own professional development. I I asked and got to go to a lot of conferences. And so for gifted and talented kids, tech conferences, I was able to take advantage of summer learning at Lawrence Hall of Science. They had a academic program for science teachers, so I was able to do that. I went to Columbia for, I know it's kind of controversial, but Lucy Calkins' Reader and Writers
Oh
Workshop.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which I firmly support that methodology for reading, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily doesn't have the phonics stuff. But I did a lot of those things along the way, and reflecting back on that, those were all great things for me to have, like as part of my resume when I decided that it was maybe time for me to leave the classroom. And so I had a lot of variety of experiences and other things other than just classroom teacher on that. Because I was on curriculum committees for choosing when we were going through the NGSS science standards and adopting a new science curriculum. So I did a lot of that type of stuff in the district, as well as some digital learning and different products in my classroom. I was like always the first teacher to embrace the technology that I had gone to these conferences from and brought them back to the classroom. And even some products that at the time were just coming out, other like now my competitors, bringing those to our school and bringing those to our district. So I was always really curious about other ways to reach students, because what was always hard for me is that here we are so busy in a classroom with those kids, and trying to differentiate instruction for them was really difficult. And so I was always looking for ways that could do that. And it came a time when my youngest went off to college. I was like, okay, maybe now's the time for me to take a look and see what else I can do with my teaching background. And then that's when I started to look for options to move out of the classroom. And my first job out of the classroom actually wasn't Pear Deck. It was with a company called Frog Street.
Oh yeah.
And Frog Street is early childhood education, and it's a curriculum company, and it's a publishing company for literally infants to like 5 or 6-year-olds, TK. And that company is based in Texas, but I became their first employee in like from Fresno North in California. And I would just drive around in my car to mainly Head Start and Migrant Education and County Offices of Education, and introduce them to Frog Street. We had some loyal customers here too already, so that was always helpful. But that was a great job, and it was a great company. But then Pear Deck reached out, and I was like, okay, let's see what that's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, with Pear Deck, I felt like everything came full circle for me with all of my experiences, ready to jump into that. And it really was an ideal situation.
Well, it's a unique situation. I mean, first, I can't recall any of my other guests who were lured into teaching as a result of volunteer work and engagement and various committees and stuff like that. So I really applaud you for opening yourself up and developing the skills and obviously the certifications required to do that. And it sounds like that's been a theme of your entire professional life. You sort of kind of open yourself up to opportunities. Folks reach out with those opportunities, and then it sounds like you've been able to meet the charge either through your own sort of development or just sort of getting in there and having it be a success. And that's led you to Pear Deck and GoGuardian now. That was an organization that, reached out to you and tapped you to join them. What were some of the things? So even though you didn't necessarily go to a school of education and you weren't, formally trained through college in that arena, you found yourself, getting involved into it a little bit later. That was still what your profession was, and you had to eventually make that transition from that profession to more of a corporate profession at Frog Street. What were some of the things that you immediately discovered about yourself? What were some of the things that you felt you brought to the table? And what were some of the things that you had to, oh my gosh, I've got to learn this because this is a completely different environment from schools?
That is so true. Well, I should also mention that before I was a stay-at-home mom, I had been in sales before. I'd been in the hotel business in sales. So I had had some years of doing that, but there had been many years. But yes, some of those, I think teachers get used to a specific schedule. And you have to be there, whatever, 7:30 in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then you're working like at night as well, and then on the weekends. So getting used to the fact that in sales, my time had a lot more flexibility, but it also could be very much extended into nights and weekends for conferences and other meetings and travel. And sometimes what I would hear in the staff room with teaching is some teachers didn't ever want to go on field trips, or they didn't want to go on overnights with their students. They didn't want to do that because that wasn't part of their union requirements. And so getting out of a union and going to work for corporate America when there's a lot more your time is not always your own, and that you have to be able to be more adaptable to giving up, personal time for work sometimes. So that was I didn't mind it, but that was something to get used to doing too, for me. But
Hmm.
I also liked having my weekends back, because teachers don't usually get their weekends back. So that was really wonderful. That holidays, it's just like some of those free time things, like as in teaching, I hate saying you have your summers off because you're not paid for your summers, but you're not working during the summer. But most teachers are working at least two jobs. And
Hmm.
that was another thing. I was working another job during the summers too. So I liked having one specific vocation to follow, which is good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. So what advice would you give? You've run the gamut. You've full spectrum. You've been an educator. You've had a previous sales role before you got into education. Now you're back into sales in the education technology space. We know, and I'm not necessarily excited about this, but it's a reality. We know that there are a lot of educators and teachers out there who are considering a potential next chapter outside of the classroom. Based on your experience and what you've learned, what's one piece of advice that you'd give to a teacher listening to this who might be considering making the transition from the classroom to education technology?
I never encourage someone to leave teaching because it's so important. And I wish that I didn't have to. And I did, I primarily did for a different challenge for me, but also for income. I was a single mom and I needed to do that. And that has been extraordinarily far better than I ever expected it could be. However, I would also say that I wish that I had explored other options in education before having to leave the classroom or leave the district, or or that or the ecosystem of education. Is that because I started meeting people in all these different roles in county offices of education in Texas, they're called ESCs. There's so many other roles for educators, in terms of professional development and training and strategic planning, curriculum instruction. There's a lot of other avenues to go into before you have to, like, maybe completely leave the ship, leave the
Hmm.
mother. So I'd say explore other options as well as what you might be able to do. Maybe it's not just at your specific school.
Yeah.
Um, um, but if you're going to, I think the way that I was able to do it, and with help from friends too, is I made sure that my resume was up to date, that I had a LinkedIn profile, that I had a lot of followers on LinkedIn, that I was doing those professional developments and doing the other things in the district, to get my to kind of build up my brand, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because when you go for an interview, they're going to ask you, besides, because a lot of companies that are interviewing now, I think it's a little different than when I first started. But they didn't always necessarily appreciate all the roles a teacher has in their all the different skills a teacher has and that they can bring to a company. So
Hmm.
you really have to sell yourself. So really finding ways to be able to do that, to get hired. I know, like GoGuardian and Pear Deck Learning, I'll say most of my colleagues that are in sales are former educators. We understand the value of that. Our solutions engineers are coming from school district IT departments. I actually wish we had more in marketing and in other positions that really understood education, and how it's so different than a regular tech company. But we have a lot of educators, and they're so wise and they're so smart and they're so capable, and they've been so successful. So there is really room out there for teachers if they're looking to get into education technology work.
Well, that is, I think that's great advice, and it's very motivating to hear. And I'm so pleased that GoGuardian and Pear Deck is sort of populating itself with folks who understand the uniqueness of education and come from the front lines like yourself. I congratulate you on your success and your devotion to an enthusiasm about education and serving educators. Susan Casey, it's been wonderful having you on the program. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. It was nice to meet you. And anyone out there needs help or any advice, you can find me on LinkedIn. So
Oh, I
thank
love
you.
that. No, that's great. I am a self-professed LinkedIn stalker. That's how I found you myself.
I
So
know. I know.
glad glad to know that you're leaving yourself open for communication on LinkedIn. Thanks again,
Yep.
Susan.
Thank you. Bye.